Oh, isn't it nice to pretend you're at work when you're actually just eating cake at Fortnum & Mason? Lovely to be here today. Those of you, I'm just trying to check, amazing as my back is, I don't want you to be seeing it. So I'm just going to talk to the front and hopefully people can see what they need to see of me. Any problems in the chat, let them know and then they'll tell me. Today, I'm going to do a little bit of work on preparing for the future. CQC is the gift that keeps on giving, and it is planning on giving again in a couple of months' time. So I'm going to be running through some of those changes. There'll be some practical work as well, which we'll be doing on tables, so it won't be just me talking at you. What I would say, there will be space for Q&A and questions at the end. I'm wondering if possibly someone on the Teams has their mic on, and that might be where it's coming from. I don't think it's done now. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, I'll go over this side. Here we go. There we go. Now everyone gets the joy of seeing my face. Okay. Next slide, please. Where's the next slide, please? Is it yourself, Lucia, or is it over here? Oh, we're there. Perfect. So we know the CQC is changing. The challenge of the rollout, by the way, just to let you know, try this. Ooh. Okay, I'm on double sound. Let's just see what we can do. Is that better? Hooray! There we go. Everybody wins. So, just to let you know, I am not from CQC. This is not my fault. So please do not shoot the messenger. My name is Louie. I'm the Director of Care Research. We do a lot of work doing training for CQC, both for managers and leaders, and also for care staff to make sure that they are all on the same page. We also do a lot of work around feedback and feedback surveys, which we might mention a little bit later. One of the main reasons CQC is changing is because as a sector, we were very loud about the problems. And actually, it's a testament to the sector that its voice was loud enough that it was listened to. That is not always the case, both as a sector and in other sectors. And what CQC have been doing is actually going quiet for once. If you remember 2024, every week there was a new thing. It was, oh, we're going to do the scoring like this. Actually, we're going to do this quality statement here. And it became quite busy. This last year, they've actually silenced right down to listen, to hear from services, to hear from care providers. And as a result, the CQC have now developed a new version of the framework, which they are looking to kind of preemptively release to the sector in the autumn. We'll talk about that in a moment. Next slide, please. There we go. So 5 key changes I'm going to very quickly kind of run through for you. Just list them and then we'll go into more detail on each. Number 1, there is no more single assessment framework. We'll talk about that in a moment, why the death of the singleness of the framework matters. Number 2, changes to quality statements. I have some word on the street knowledge on what those number of quality statements is going to be. Number 3, specific ratings characteristics. We do some practical work around that as well to help services know exactly what good and outstanding looks like for each quality statement. Return to professional judgment and report changes, so more kind of information from inspectors in terms of them being controlled rather than scoring. We'll talk about that in a moment. And a return to the named inspector, which is a big piece of the puzzle that a lot of the sector really struggled with, the fact that you don't have any connection with an inspector until the day they turn up. No more single assessment framework. Next slide, please. So the idea of the single assessment framework was very simple. It's all in the name. We'll just have one framework that will cover everything. Hospitals, dentists, care homes, residential, supported living. You'll all be covered by this magical framework with points that will all match all of you. This was kind of met with a bit of question mark from everyone in the sector who thought, sector, a hospital, a care home, is this going to work? Julian Hartley, who began in December 24, so took over following all the debacle that happened, very openly stated that in his role, he always felt the singleness of the single assessment framework wasn't going to work. And so one of the things that's come through since his promotion and involvement in the organisation is a moving away from the idea of one framework for all. It hasn't worked. Services want specific guidance that's sector specific, and they want quality statements that match the sector that they are in. Next slide, please. So what's changing? CQC have openly stated they're going to do sector-specific inspection approaches, so making sure we're going back to inspectors, focusing on the sectors that they have the most experience in, and having inspections guided by the location. Defining which quality statements apply to which sectors. Previously, you had 34 quality statements, and in theory, they were all applicable to all services, all setting types. That has now been chucked in the bin. and there's a focus on making sure that specific quality statements make sense for specific sectors. In short, we're not going to have one bunch of quality statements for all. We're going to have different sets of quality statements dependent upon the sector that you are a part of. Just for this room, sector is probably going to mean adult social care sector rather than residential, supported living, shared lives. It's likely that sector is going to simply mean the adult social care sector. That might be another battle we go down at a later point. We shall see what comes out the other side. So we said adult social care may have its own set of quality statements, and this is a massive change in direction because the whole point of the single assessment framework was we all get on the same page. And what CQC are doing 2 years later and going, let's give you all different pages because getting all on the same page hasn't worked. Again, please don't blame me. This was not my decision. I'm just the messenger. Next slide. Changes to the quality statements themselves. This is where kind of the rubber hits the road and people are waiting for quite a lot more detail. Next slide, please. Oh, got it. Here we go. So we have the Care Providers Alliance, who did a big kind of investigation funded by the CQC. The CQC said, right, Care Providers Alliance, we need you to get an idea of what the care sector feels about the framework and the rollout. And boy, did the Care Provider Alliance deliver, because it was about 70 pages of fury and honesty. And one of the big things that came through consistently was that there were too many quality statements. I always thought 34 was a good start, because if you look at the 300 plus Chloe statements, Chloe prompts, to get to 34 quality statements was quite a big slimming down. But if you've looked at the quality statements, if you've used them before, you'll find there's a lot of overlap. And so what CQC have now very purposely stated is there will be a reduction in quality statements. They are going to change. The word on the street, so I've spoken to a few people who've been involved in various meetings. So if I wake up tomorrow and, there's a horse's head in my bed or something, we know that CQC have found out. The word on the street, as it were, is that they may be reducing to around 23. Now, whether 23 is just the 23 that apply to adult social care, whether 23 is the total, then different ones apply, whether adult social care has a different 23 to NHS hospitals and trusts, that will come out in the wash over the next few months. But if you think going from 34 to 23, we're losing about a third of our quality statements, which is probably a good thing because there was a lot of duplication. Will all 23 be applied to adult social care? Will there be separate sets depending on sector? That's something that will come out in the wash over the next couple of months. Next slide, please. Chris Day, who is the head of CQC engagement, has written this. It was pushed by CQC, so it's something that we know that he was allowed to say, if that makes sense. Assessment framework, making it clearer and fairer. We asked for feedback on our assessment statements. We heard there's broad agreement on moving workforce wellbeing and enablement to the well-led question. So some of them are going to be moving around a little bit. And you strongly favour merging it with shared direction and culture. There's that idea of some quality statements are double booking, so maybe they need to come together. The theme of equity is vital, but must be applied differently to staff and people who use services. So again, there were equity in access, equity in experience and outcomes. Sounds like those quality statements are all coming together. We will know a little bit more in the coming months. What this is showing us is that though they really are taking a scalpel to the whole thing and going, actually, that goes there, that's not needed anymore. To go from 34 to 23 is quite a big reduction. So we'll talk about what we need to do preparing in a moment. But I think a really core thing, if you're working supporting care providers or you are yourself a care provider, keep a really strong ear out these next couple of months, because as the framework changes, expectations on providers will change. And whilst it's not going to be a big bang overnight, you don't want to proverbially be caught short. So we want to try and make sure that we at least know what's around the corner. Next slide, please. Sector-specific ratings characteristics. You like this one because I stopped talking in a few minutes. It'll give you a bit of chance to talk amongst each other. So I remember sitting on a webinar with CQC back in about March 2024. And there was a bunch of lovely CQC people. I have no problem with CQC. I have no problem with inspectors. They're very good people doing their very best. A question was asked around when will we as a sector get guidance on what good and outstanding looks like for each of these quality statements? And the response from CQC was very direct. We believe the quality statement gives you enough information. The quality statement is set at good. If you go above the quality statement, you're going to hit an outstanding. If you go below that, you're heading towards RI. If you've got kind of major breaches and regulation breaches, you're going to be inadequate. We believe that is a good system for you to kind of gauge where you're at. That didn't wash very well with the sector. And as a result, CQC have done an about turn and said, we are going to create ratings characteristics for every quality statement. So you know what good, outstanding, RI and adequate looks like. And we are going to do those rating characteristics different for each sector. So adult social care will have its own set of ratings characteristics for good, inadequate, and outstanding, which again, in theory, will come out in the next couple of months. Now, unbeknownst to most people, next slide, please. On Halloween, and I remember it because my daughters were dressed up as cats, and they sent this email at about 5 p.m. and there are two looks my wife knows the meaning of. One is come upstairs. The other look is I'm so sorry, something's kicked off at work and I have to abandon this lovely family experience to go and do work. And it was that look I had to give her on Halloween evening because CQC very quietly released a draft set of ratings characteristics and it was buried in email. I don't know if you can see that little blue line there. If you click that link, you'd magically open a 70-page document of quality statement characteristics that no one really ever knew about. I sent it to one of our clients, someone I knew very well. I hope no one minds a light swear word. His exact response was, bloody hell, that's the best thing CQC have put out in the last 5 years and no one knows about it. So what we have, I'm going to do a bit of work on these in a moment, was the first inkling of what might good, outstanding, RI and inadequate look like for each quality statement. So we've already got a demo version of what this is going to be. What the new version is going to do is going to tighten it much more across what in adult social care these boundaries look like. So what we're going to do in a moment, and my grammar assistant is going to come and join me if that's okay, to hand these out. What we have here is we have a selection of quality statements. And again, for the online group, don't worry, we're going to go to another slide in a moment to give you your versions. You'll be able to see there's a characteristic of what 4 looks like, what 3, what 2, and what 1 look like. We put these on tables. And really, there's 3 questions we want you to ask. Go back to the previous slide for a moment. Sorry, you stay where you are for a moment, don't worry. What is needed, in your view, to make these sector specific? How might your service use these and the way that you organise and assess and kind of manage evidence and audits? And really, most importantly, where would you rate yourself against these characteristics? So we're using the draft ones, which are going to be slightly reshaped to match the adult social care version that's coming out in the next few months. We want to give you a break from my voice and also give you a chance to talk to one another, look at these characteristics and kind of understand, okay, what is needed to make them more sector specific? How would we as a service use them? And most importantly, using these as a guide, where do we think our service is at? And if you don't work directly in a service, talk to those that are and reflect on the systems and the things that you provide. How might these ratings characteristics inform the work that you do to support the sector too? I'm going to stop talking for a moment. If we go to the next slide, please. Those of you on the online chat, here's one of them, monitoring and improving outcomes. You can see there's a definition for 4, a definition for a 3, a definition for a 2, and a definition for a 1. And again, have the same conversations amongst yourselves. Where would we place ourselves on this particular quality statement? How would we use it? And what do we think would need to be tweaked or changed to enable those definitions to be more useful for our specific sector? Right, talk amongst yourselves, and we are going to hand these out to you all. You take those 2, I'll take these 2, you do these tables, and I'll do them. So you'll see on the documents, there are 4, we're giving a set of 4 across each table. Different quality statements on each one, and you'll see. Okay, so have a look. 4 is what's an outstanding, 3 is what a good would look like, 2 is what an RI, 1 is what an inadequate. To discuss, things to discuss, do we feel these make sense for adult social care? What would need to be tweaked to make them more adult social care relevant? For those of you that run care services, how useful is this information? What would you use it for? Would it inform your audits? Would it inform the way you train your staff? Would it inform the way that you collect evidence? And then finally, especially if you are running a service, where would I sit today? So if I look at this list and I look at my service, do I think the work that we do is in the 4 range, the 3 range, the 2 or the 1? Do we think we could get the evidence together to show where we are on these specific quality statements in those hopefully outstanding and good ranges? Does that all make sense? Brilliant. I used to be a primary school teacher, so I'll go around each table and check everyone's okay. And if anyone needs to sit on the circle table with me for me to explain it in more detail, that's absolutely fine. Brilliant. And hopefully those of you in the group, that's all clear too. Thanks very much. Okay, I think let's feed back. If I can be, hopefully those in the online group can hear me as well. We're going to do a bit of feedback. If it's your turn to speak, I'll pass you this lovely little fluffy microphone so that the people in the online space can hear too. We're just going to very quickly go to each table and just ask any kind of particular thing that stands out. It might be around how this becomes more adult social care friendly. It might be around where you feel as a service you would sit on particular quality statements, particular rating characteristics. It may be around how you as a service, both as a care service might use this, or if you're in another industry that's supporting the care sector, what this sort of information might mean for you and the directions you take in the support that you give and the systems that you provide. What I'm going to do, because I've done this enough times to know that no one volunteers, I'm going to just pick table by table, and then you have to fight amongst yourselves as to who is going to speak. And then I will obviously come to our lovely online team, online space as well, to give some space for them to give some views. I know there was a poll as well, which I want to open up and have a look at as well, because there was an interesting piece of work in that too. I'm going to start with this table here. Anyone on this table? Aha, here we go. We have someone brave and willing. Any kind of particular insight or anything that stood out from having a look at those characteristics?
Yeah, so we didn't break our conversation down into the individual characteristics. Instead, our conversation really focused on the added complexity of having this without enough information to really be able to differentiate between one another. Neil made the point, most providers are going to go straight to good and say, how do I get to exceptional? And it, at the moment, is quite opaque. Those sentences are so similar without an explanation of what the evidence would need to be, that on a Tuesday it could be one and on a Wednesday it could be other. Another point made, sorry, what's your name? Martin was saying, these are all about a snapshot in time. And, given that we're here talking about tech, one of the things that increased digital systems can really do is give you a longitudinal picture, but none of that's in here. Yeah. Or what that would look like, or how you would evidence it, or that they'd even be willing to accept it. So they were all kind of points. I think really helpful. This is good. We want more, but we want more again.
Yeah. You want actionable points. You want actionable points. Yeah. So care providers will look at this and say, right, okay, that's great, but how? Yeah. How do I actually do this?
And this is where the sector-specific piece is missing here, because this is, you can't do a how if this applies to hospitals, dentists, children's homes, blah, blah, blah. But now that they're moving to a sector-specific version of this, bear in mind, this was the Halloween surprise that I received and no one else seems to discover. The sector-specific version needs to have an emphasis on longitudinal, which systems might be able to deliver, and as you pointed, the very specifics. But what does an outstanding continuity process in a care home look like? So it is those specifics. Really helpful. Let's go to another table, if that's okay. Any other table want to volunteer? Oh, Joe, I'm just going to pick Mark, because I know Mark. He always has something to say. Mark. And as a care provider yourself, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no.
Anyone else with on the table as well?
Thank you very much. So we had delivering evidence-based care and treatment. We felt that, a bit like what Michelle said, some of it's quite vague and overarching as opposed to it being very kind of specific. Some of the terminology that they use, we felt that could have been more reflective of terminology that the sector now uses. There's a big part in the exceptional standards of care around lessons learned, especially of how you drive a service forward, that we felt was missing. And then with regards to the significant shortfalls, there's not really too much that it gives. It talks about nutrition and hydration a lot, but doesn't talk about medication, training staff, all the things that you think would be there aren't there.
Yeah, so there's that is missing. Some language that perhaps needs to be much more in line with what we use in adult social care. And again, there's perhaps some expecting misses.
In terms of terminology, I personally have a huge problem with the word people. I find it very vague and very cold. It is an individual, it is a person, it is a resident or somebody who lives at home or somebody you're looking after. People sounds cold to me.
One service, say client, and then we'll say client to another, and it's like we've kind of cornered them. Others will want to use person that receives support and care. Okay, it's about 8 words, but that's fine. Others will use resident, and will say, no, it's not resident because it's their home.
Yeah, exactly.
And it is an ongoing adult social care unfinished story. Yeah. What do we call the individuals that we care for, love, and support?
An individual. An individual. That's the word individual is better than people.
What? The microphone is coming around.
think I got slightly nominated here. We've got, it's quite interesting. So I'm not a provider. We provide psychometric assessments to help you recruit the right people. And there's a sentence here in independence, choice and control of exceptional standard of care. Where possible, people decide who provides their care and support and when. And what's an interesting dynamic is we actually create a report to help inclusive recruitment, and none of our clients use it because they don't see the benefit. And there we go, is exceptional care. So suddenly it's highly relevant. So very interesting to see that that's going to be difficult to achieve.
If done well, it could give us a lot more direction. If it's done effectively and labelled correctly, it could give more services the direction on what they need to do to reach that outstanding, which is where the value of something like this are coming from. Hey, hello.
Hi. Hi, Louie. Well, we pinched the workforce well-being and enablement from the Care Worker charity. You have a report, okay? And in that report, the well-being is in 4 pillars. None of these pillars, I'm not saying none, but maybe one is mentioned here. So it would be really important that the organizations looks at the physical, the psychological, the spiritual, and the financial well-being.
So the HR Avenger got safe and effective staffing. So I think that might have been a setup. We were just talking through what we got here, and actually very much the same feedback. It's very open to interpretation, very, very subjective, not really much direction. So between us, we could all read exceptional standards of care and all have a different version of what we think that means. So they're great, lovely, fluffy statements, but there's actually not enough in there for us to say, right, well, this is how we can go away and actually audit ourselves on that or understand that we're meeting that criteria. And probably some of it is a little bit, there's reference to agency staff here and working with clients that use agency staff, maybe not regularly, maybe regularly. It depends on where they're in their journey with you as an organisation for where they might be able to meet some of this. So again, what Michelle was saying earlier about it might be different on a Tuesday versus a Friday. So I think we really got the same vibe from that as well, just on this one.
I'm going to make sure that we go through the next table. Thank you. That is, of course, a joke, Anushka. You're lovely. Oh, okay. Sorry. Apologies. We're going to go to the last table, and then we're going to go to the wonderful online team to hear a little bit more around what they kind of came through. Anyone on this table wish to make any comment based on what? Let's see. Go for it. Quick comment. That's good.
I looked at medicines optimization, and because that's my area. I think just voicing what everyone else said, I think it's very vague. At the moment, CQC are coming out with 1, if not 2 pharmacists in all their inspections, and I don't think this even covers even like a fraction of what they cover. It doesn't mention things like PRNs and things that are sort of popping up in reports. So if a provider was to look at this, I don't think it would give them a very good indication of exact specifics of what they need to look at.
Thank you. I think that highlight, it's not giving you the how, is it? It's giving you in a broad sense the what. And this is, as we look to the next version of this, the sector specific version of this, when that is shared, and we'll go to a slide, we're going to go to the group, and then we're going to go the online group, then we go to another slide where we'll talk about timelines. This is the sort of thing that we need to speak very loudly about because they are still listening. So if in November we get the sector-specific version and it's not meeting these needs, it's not longitudinal, doesn't have the detail, it doesn't have actionable, followable steps, we need to be quite loud about that whilst they're still in the reflection phase. Does that make sense? We can't start moaning about this in July. Hi. Go for it.
To be loud about it. What after today? How does it translate? We've heard some very wise words around here. What do you actually needs to be done?
Yeah. So this is the big question of how do you get into the CQC's ears? And there are a couple of key ways. First of all, if anyone is partnered up with groups like NCF, Skills for Care, these are the bodies that meet with CQC on a pretty regular basis. They sit at the table with them, they go through the documents, they have the arguments. So first of all, it's making sure that we are using some of those groups that are part of the conversation. I think as a group, CareTech Avengers has a potential to mobilise and to also be a voice piece. Also, as a sector, CQC often send their front end people to the events. So things like the care shows, things like the care road shows, you can bend their ear and they will speak and listen. Not necessarily the people right on the stand, but the ones that are doing the talks are usually far more able to enact and respond to what's being heard. So I think meeting in person where you can at some of the events, I think as an organisation here, we have a responsibility to raise our voice. And there are other organisations that do sit at the table. NCF, Skills for Care, these are people that are invited sometimes for, bi-weekly meetings with CQC to reflect on the changes coming through. These are the people that are worth getting our voice to as well, because they do have a seat at the table. I'm going to jump into the group. There was a fascinating poll that came up as well. So I'm not sure who is running the group and their amazing powers. Oh, go for it. There's a poll, and Anushka's going to... What's your biggest priority right now? Oh, we've got it on the screen here. And we can see preparing for CQC inspections was 40%, supporting the workforce was 20%, improving operations was 20%, and enhancing resident experiences was 20%. So I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of work to be done around both understanding the inspection piece and then getting things in place for that work. If we go back to the next slide, so hopefully what that's done, it's shown you some of the things that we are awaiting. There are two other ones I just want to very quickly talk about. One is a return to professional judgment and report changes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here we go. So evidence category scoring was dropped back in December. So essentially what we now have is we have the CQC inspectors making a decision on whether you get a 1, a 2, a 3 or a 4 for each quality statement. The idea around that is that it has sped up the report process, because people were waiting 6-7 months for a report because they had to score every evidence category, which meant that you could easily have hundreds of little numbers that CQC had to process and approve before a report came out. Now it's just the quality statements, which does speed that process up. Next slide, please. So essentially what we have is the CQC inspector is making a professional judgment on what they see in those evidence categories, the people's experiences, feedback from staff and leaders, feedback from partners, observations, processes. That leads them to give you a score between 1 and 4 for each of those quality statements. And then the maths kicks in to give you your key question rating, which then gives your final rating. I'm just going to show very briefly how that works, because I've been surprised over the last couple of years. We still meet a lot of providers that don't fully understand how you get your good, how you get your outstanding. So next slide, please. What we've got here, we've got the caring key question with the current quality statements. You can see they are kindness, compassion and dignity, treating people as individuals, etc., etc. In this example, they've given them a 3 for kindness and compassion, 2 for treating people as individuals, 3 for independence, choice to control, 3 for responding to people's immediate needs, 3 for workforce enablement. What you then do is you add those all up. 3 plus 2 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 14. The maximum score you could have got if you got 4, 4, 4, 4, 4 would have been 20. You've got a 14 out of 20, which is 70%. And as you can see here, that puts you in that good range. That is how CQC are using the scoring to create your rating for each key question. So essentially what's happening is the inspectors are coming up with the 1 to 4s for the quality statements. The maths comes up with what your actual rating is for that key question. And then next slide, please. And then those key questions come together and the rules are still the same. Essentially, if you have 2 outstandings and the rest are good, you're going to get an outstanding. If you have 2 goods, or if you have a set of goods and only 1 RI maximum, you can get a good. If you've got 2 RIs, you're going to get an RI. 2 inadequates, you're going to get an inadequate. That hasn't changed and that seems to be staying the same. No quality statement is worth any more. So there's no like double bubble. If you do super great medicines, you get double points. It doesn't work like that at present. They could turn around and change that, but that would cause a lot of challenge around how they kind of then manage that. So no, everything is weighted equally, which means one of the things, we were speaking to a service yesterday who they'd got an inspection back in 2019, hadn't gone where they want, and there was one issue that had totally scuppered a whole key question. I was saying, look, under this framework, the worst they can do is give you a 1 or a 2 in that specific medicines area. Whereas previously, they used that to completely override the whole of SAFE. So it does mean that the inspectors are, in some sense, hemmed in is the wrong word, but they are guided to focus their score on each area rather than take their favourite bit and make that the shape of the report, which I think is a valuable thing. Next slide, please. old reports and new reports. One of the big things CQC have been piloting is how do we make these reports shorter? Because what was happening in 2024 was every report would have a little paragraph about every evidence category. So you'd have something like safe environments would be 4 paragraphs. If you've got 34 quality statements, 4 or 5 paragraphs, it quickly becomes a lot of paragraphs to write. What we're seeing in the newer reports, and again, every inspector is their own person and some kind of veer more towards the left than to the right. But what we're seeing in the reports is much more succinct. Essentially 3 or 4 very standardized statements finished off with a sentence that includes some form of feedback from either a person receiving support, an individual receiving support, resident, whichever term everyone chooses to use, and or a staff member. There is some thinking that will, in time, the reports become actually drop-down statements with then some personalisation from the individual. The value of that would be that it would cause inspectors to actually be on the same page. Because if I have to select a drop-down statement, then I have to sense check that that does come from the 4 and the 3. Whereas if I get to open a Word document and just wax lyrical, you see how my waxing lyrical might be very different from someone else's waxing lyrical. So there may be some work around standardisation of reports through this process too. Next slide, please. How are we doing time-wise? Oh, I've got 3 minutes. Return of the named inspector. Okay. This is dependent on a recruitment drive. This is essentially a dream that we would love to see become reality. But for CQC to do that, there's going to be a serious need to increase inspectors. There was quite a diaspora, quite a leaving of inspectors during the development of this, and CQC haven't really attracted many back. The intention is that CQC wants to get rid of the revolving door of inspectors, the idea of you're kind of in radio silence for 4 years, and then an inspector turns up one Tuesday and just ransacks your service for 3 days, and then you never hear from them again. They've recognised that that was one of the biggest misses of the framework, was that it removed the relationship between localised inspectors and services, and they really want to bring that back, and they've said that on several occasions. There is, of course, going to need to be a really considered recruitment drive and rethink to enable that to happen. There's also a lot of training going on around CQC's culture, because they recognise that they have been essentially the bad guys that come in, kind of the parking attendants of the social care world. And so there is some work to think through how can we reposition and redevelop our relationship so that we represent a supportive environment rather than a punitive one. Next slide, please. Timelines. What's coming up around the corner? Autumn 2025, again, the use of the word autumn. Is it September? Is it October? Is it November? In true CQC style, they've given us a nice big breadth, so there's no specifics. This is, again, especially from CQC, we are preparing a formal consultation that will ask for your views on the proposals we've developed based on everything we've heard. Your feedback will directly shape our next steps. So in, shall we say October, shall we say November, CQC will reveal what this new project looks like. What do the quality statements look like? What do the ratings characteristics look like? What does the professional judgment look like? And there is an open discussion around us responding as a sector to that. Are there still too many quality statements? Is there too much overlap? So on and so forth. Late 2025, so let's call that December, into 2026, early testing and phased improvements. I've already spoken to one very large group that have signed up to be a tester of this. So it truly is in the works, that things are being put in place for this to be tested. And then 2026 onwards, continuous rollout. And they've been very open. This isn't a big bang change. It's a phased, co-designed evolution. Their words, not mine. Guided by your insight, grounded in evidence, shaped by the reality of health and care delivery. Which is what we hope it will be. I hope it's that. We'll continue to work with you to make improvements and develop the approach. In their credit, end of 2023, we all just got a bunch of emails that said, this is your framework, have fun. At least we have a tacit recognition of what we all think should happen this time around. So hopefully CQC will hold itself to its own standards, and it will be more of a phased, more of a gentle approach, whereby there's a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of back and forth as the sector feeds back. Hopefully that has given you some insight. Just one more slide. I won't go into all the detail. I won't go into all the detail on all these 3. Things to do in the here and now. Number 1, listen out for changes. We know that autumn kind of revelation is on its way. We, as Care Research, are doing a lot of work around free webinars, free resources. You know, kind of like the war room where Churchill was like, right, if the Nazis do this, we'll do this thing. If the Nazis do that, we'll do this thing. We've kind of developed a plan of if the CQC say this, these are not that I'm comparing them to Nazis, but if the CQC say this, we'll do this stuff. If the CQC say that, we're going to do this stuff. We've got ways of making sure that all services get the information they need. Focusing on feedback. There are, from everyone I've been speaking to, there are no changes to the evidence categories themselves. Feedback is 3 out of those 5 evidence categories. You need the people you support, their families, staff and partners on side. We do a lot of work supporting about 400 services with that feedback piece. We can support you with that. Finally, prepare your care staff. We do a lot of training with care staff around what to do when you're asked a question you don't know the answer to. What to do when you've forgotten your answer. Here's what to do if you feel like hiding in a cupboard and actually that's not what we want to do during inspection. So think about making sure your care staff are on side. We do obviously do training both for care staff to help them understand the framework and for managers and leaders too. What I'm going to do, if you can just kind of super swish, I won't talk through the slides, but there's a slide that has a QR code. If you want to receive this PowerPoint and a bunch of other things that might be useful for your service, please do scan the QR code, whack your email address in, and you'll get this sent through and we can kind of share all of that. I'm not sure if someone can click through to the QR code slide. You can see we've got through 49 out of 74 slides, so that's not bad. Feel free to scan that QR code if you want. You'll get this PowerPoint and you'll get a bunch of other information too. Again, feel free to speak to me afterwards and I can also share it that way as well. Anushka, I hope that met everyone's needs. I didn't go too over time.